Thank you. We want to welcome everybody to this closing plenary. And I don't know about you, but this has been a wow of a time and a really a special experience. And thinking about strange words, you Australians use the word deadly as a positive kind of a thing. And in Rory's class, we were trying to put together a song and for this thing about this year's Unconference was deadly from Australia to Kenya. This year's Unconference was deadly for you and me. But we mean that in the best and positive way. And so we want to welcome everybody with both a sign of jubilation, but with also probably some tiredness for some people whose time zones got all mixed up in terms of this. And we want to, this wonderful drawing here was the drawing that Fiona did from the opening plenary session. And as you can see, we were really busy. A whole lot of things happened in that. And it was such a wonderful way to start the conference with the focus on the Indigenous perspective and respective of the ABCD. And it started us just right so that we weren't overwhelmed with the sort of Western colonial kind of approach to it. So cheers for that opening session. And we want to say some thanks, some special thanks to a whole lot of people who helped we can do the next slide. And we want to say a thanks to a whole lot of people who helped make this happen, our gratitude for that. And to celebrate that we had over 51 countries involved, from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. Now, how is that for being complete from A to Z that we did that? And 49 sessions and 943 registrations. I don't know how that compares to other years, but it's a great, and it was a great and lively group of people. And then, as you can see, all of these important, the people who really helped to make this happen. Many are unsung heroes, but we want to say special thanks to Allison, who just put all this Google stuff together way beyond my capacity to even think about it, and to the Jader Institute of Dee and Fiona and Michelle, who without them this thing would, well, both everybody I'm mentioning would not have happened, but they carried on their experiences and lent their expertise from their other staff and whatever it was to make it happen. And then the Tamarack Institute, Heather, and the ABCD folks, Institute, and then thinking about Cody Institute and how important that was. And so many of these other names that are down the line here. And I got to think especially of Amanda, who just was constantly in there doing on her vacation and whatever all it was, doing things that needed to get done. The joy I think of this is that ABCD, this Unconference, is done so everybody is free. There is no registration fee. Now, how many conferences, quality conferences, do you go that happens? And it only happens because of the hard work, the dedication, and the months of planning, the months of expenditures on their own to make this thing happen. So this is a wonderful example of ABCD in action. Next slide.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mary. So we just wanted to share a little bit about how we did it. And how we do it every year. And it is really based on, walking our talk. It is the ABCD principles that guide us. And we always end up forming these smaller working groups that then also have quite often subgroups, and people step up with their gifts and talents and skills, and they share what they can, and sometimes wanting to learn something new and stepping into a new practice. So this is how it just kind of continues to evolve, and volunteers sharing. And we always have this discussion around what are our principles of working together. Like how is it possible that we work with, well, this year was 25 volunteers across 7 countries. So we have that discussion about our principles of working together and what that will look like as we continue from the 3rd of February onwards this year for 8 months. We had these principles that supported us. And then the calling question or calling statement, that this year we came up with that communities leading change. It's not done lightly. We don't just pluck words. We listen to all of you. The people on the planning team sense into other practitioners around the world and what is emerging, what are we hearing, what's coming up, and we do a bit of a brainstorming and then converge different messages and end up with a couple of maybes. And I think this ended up, I think it was over about 3 weeks, so which would be 6 meetings, that then it just kind of emerged. It was actually communities leading change. And I remember that moment on that call when it converged, and it hit the spot. And there was about a dozen of us on that call, and we were like, yes, that's it. So it's really great, working with those teams and getting to that point as well. So with the participatory pieces that we've still got just kind of left over at the moment, just to have a quick look at. So I'm just going to stop sharing this because we will have a look at Jodi's wall. I have been talking with, emailing with Jodi and his partner, and you can still leave messages on Jodi's wall if you like. Just let me get it up. It is on the website. You can go and have a look. And so we had this through these pages on Jamboard that were messages and memories, your questions or photos. And so a few of the messages that we got up there. We had Rory and there was a couple of others, Alison, left a couple of messages and pictures. And so Jodi and his partner Ingrid have been checking in and looking at these, which they said they were going to do later today as well. And then there was a few people who left some questions, and where Jodi's apparently halfway through kind of looking at those and responding, so they will still come. And then there was some photos as well of times when Jodi was at the Institute or at a faculty meeting. There's a couple of older ones there from when he was in Australia with us. And so I know that he's really appreciated those messages and questions, and it was really nice to have him involved in that way this year. So thank you to everyone who put something up there. And like I said, you can still put something up. And yes, there you go. Michelle's just put it up there. Thanks, Michelle. And then the other participatory piece we wanted to just touch on was, Amanda, do you want me to just share the screen? How do you want to do it?
Sure, if you like. Yeah, you can just put the slide back up. So Dee just wanted me to speak a little bit to the open space that we had, I don't know how many hours ago, over 12, 16-ish, my last night, which was just an opportunity for us to take some time, about just over halfway through the Unconference, to bring our burning questions together and have conversations on those. We had a great group chat about women-led development and what that looks like in ABCD. We also did just a bit of a check-in on the Unconference so far and what's standing out for us, what we're learning and taking away. It was really a great time. And something that we wanted to offer is, if people want to keep adding your burning questions to the form today and moving forward, it's something that we can offer to the planning team next year as a touch point of kind of getting a sense of what are the burning questions that people have and how might that help shape the Unconference. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to check in together a couple times over the next year on those burning questions. Yeah, so that's an offering. Anything else you want me to say about it, Dee?
Would you like me to share the link for the marketplace? And we've got the form there.
Yeah, I threw it. Yeah, I threw
Mm.
it into the things in the chat.
All right, great. And there I went to one of those sessions, and there were some very passionate open space topics that I'm sure will keep emerging. So thank you, Amanda. It was a great session. So let me just get back up to the slideshow. The other piece that we had is Fiona. Fiona's been madly scribbling away in the background there, and this is just a small snapshot of what she has done, and I'm sure we'll get more up on the website. But Fiona, would you like to speak to the, some of the harvest this year?
I will, thank you. And thank you again for letting my scribbling and my putting things together a little bit differently be part of this work. And I really love it. I just wanted to be really just grateful for the sessions that I went into, and everyone whose session I managed to capture. It'll be in your folder as well, so you'll have a copy of it. I'll make sure that it goes into there. And just lining up with that open space stuff, Dee, you know, that was one that was really an interesting conversation, and just the process. And I think I love coming up with different images of the way that we work together or what we're doing together that everyone can share. So I just encourage people to take these away if you can, and see if you can, you know, even use a little bit of it. And I think one of my favourite was women supporting women of ABCD, supporting women of ABCD, which I think was now going to be one of my favourite images to have written. And I'm reminded, and you can see in the top left one, there was something about everything that we do, and with Amanda's session, and it was remember I do and promoting ourselves. And that theme came out a lot. I noticed that a lot in a lot of sessions that I went to, that people were talking about how we don't promote ourselves, but we have to get a little bit better at that as well. And so that for me was a theme, and you might see that if you have a look at all of the pictures that I drew. And one of the tasks that Amanda set us to do was, because we all are so good at self-promotion, we have to write down 10 things that make us remarkable. And we struggled with that. So I've put that out there. I've put that out there to everybody on my harvest, that we all have to do that. And just letting you know that the word remarkable ends up in Rory's ballad of the ABCD flats, because that was a word we chose to use in our little choir that we came together with as well. So the intersections of so many things come together with the graphic harvest, but also with the music stuff. So I keep coming back to the theme, creativity brings people together. So enjoy them, please enjoy them all. I love doing every single one of them. I'm doing one now, and we'll get that up there as well. Thanks, Dee.
Thanks so much, Fiona. And then we have a whole lot of individual harvests and screenshots in each of the folders of the session hosts as well. So we will get them available too. So yeah, there was a lot of participation going on behind the scenes as well. And thank you to everyone who joined in and participated and contributed in those different ways. So I'm going to hand back over to Mary, who's going to give us a quick provocation about the tension between the large and the small. And, you know, we've heard this a lot over the years, many of us, and even remembering back to the ABCD festival in Blackpool in 2015, where there was a whole lot of us, and Jody Kretzmann gave a keynote there, and he said, "Small is the new big." And a lot of us took that, about celebrating those small steps and what that might look like. So I'm going to stop sharing screen while Mary talks about this. So over to you, Mary.
Thank you. It's been an exciting time to see the growth of ABCD, and having been there in the early years with Jody and John, and we were scrambling, and before the Green Book got written, and then to see it go to Australia. I had the chance to go in one of those early trips to Australia with the ABCD group with Jim Deers and Jody Kretzmann, and the global stuff started. And just to think of where we've been and where we're heading, that we've got folks participating from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. I mean, I just think that's just so amazing to think about that. And although most everything was in English, except for a few French sessions, we do cross a whole lot of languages and countries, but kinds of settings. And so I think that we can with confidence say that we are a movement. We are honestly a movement and not an organization. We are a movement. And what does it mean to be a movement? A movement is a group of people working together to advocate their shared political, social, and other ideas, artistic ideas. And so we are not simply blah, blah, blah movement, but we are advocates of a way of doing things, of a mindset that turns deficits into opportunities, and all those good things. And Jody, and John and Cormac in their new book also declared this to be a movement in a response to the factors of the failure of external approaches to our societal needs, so that the sense that we are indeed a movement. But Dee talked about that time in England when we met, and Jody made his points, and that the temptation, as you grow larger, the temptation is to get organized in a sort of Western structure kind of a way, and have committees and boards, and we have working groups, and we have a lot of fluidity in what we do and how we act. But I'm going to just remind us of some of the dangers that Jody shared with us at that time. And it included the fact that we fall in love with the rhetoric of ABCD. We have to be really careful about that. That we become and have to keep finding new language. And that's why it's so good to have people from so many other cultures and places reminding us that there are other interpretations of the language that we use. And so we need some fluidity and some expansion, in terms of that. And that we don't have solutions for every kind of situation. They've got to come out of a dynamic process in community, and they can't always be categorized and labeled and put into place. And that too often we are satisfied with asset mapping rather than that as a stepping stone to moving into action. And we love our little maps, and they're so pretty, and we sit back satisfied. But the critical step is, how do we move into action? How do we take those next steps and make it happen? And then also that we too easily we have there are things ABCD doesn't really grasp or doesn't really deal with. And somebody like I am really concerned about policies, and I'm concerned about the justice issues, which so often start in small ways, but take larger frameworks to dealing with them. And we don't have the tools for all of that in our bailiwick, and that's why we need to think about how do we work with and how can we bring our gifts of the thinking of the gifts of people and connecting with each other into this wider arena of policies and ways to change the injustices that continue to go on in such an important kind of, in such a terrible kind of a way that we all need to be a part of. And so it seems to me that at this point, because we are such an expansive movement and there are so many opportunities that we have some dangers. And that, as I know that ABCD in USA is talking about a membership base. Well, and that's a wonderful thing, but it may be that ABCD is much too, needs to be much too diverse and much too fluid to get into some of those structures. And we need to think about that. And then also it seems to me that the word we need to think about as we move forward is not getting bigger, as how do we, because we too often want to think we want to get bigger. How do we get more people involved in it? But because what we need to focus on is the local, that all the things that we're a global movement that values small local action. And there's a paradox in that. There's a paradox between the globalness and that what we're talking about are small actions, and that the small actions may not have major repercussions immediately or even, but over time they might. And that the tension between that is a really, really important thing. But the temptation is that we think about going to scale. That the smaller, but Jody reminded us that the smaller we remain, the more local and the more powerful we'll be. And that's going to be tested as these times come on and as we move. And thinking about, this whole conference has been done without a budget. And who can imagine that? But at some point, do we need to also think about how do we pull a little bit of cash into the situation to make things happen? I don't know. Those are the issues in front of us, it seems to me. But I just want to say that I think the word we want to talk about is not expanding and growing or trying to become an organization, but that we want to think about how do we proliferate. I love that word, proliferate. How do we, these small things that are happening that give little lights, little examples of what can happen in local communities, and how do we share that and make it, and how do we proliferate that in more settings and in more places? So I celebrate today that we are a movement and we have come of age, and that we can joyously move forward into the unknown, into the changes that will be ahead of us as we move forward. But we can do that with joy and confidence and knowing the next discoveries that may be facing us. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Mary. Sorry, were you still saying something?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, just wonderful. And I think it's I've heard more and more people talking about, the movement or being part of that and what that might look like. And there is a few of us from the ABCD Institute board who are hosting a conversation next month on what is a partner, what is an ally, what does that look like? So there is movement happening within the steps of that movement as well. So, and I know that on the Unconference website, there's details about that conversation, but feel free to reach out. So just before we go into some breakout rooms, I just wanted to share with you, like Mary was just saying, there's, looking at the local, what does the local actually look like? And I'll just get my slides back up. So looking at these assets, principles, values around the world. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, I've mucked it up. And this came from conversations in various trainings, meetings, and I was hearing all these different ways that people would talk about assets or different ways of principles, and it's all contextual. It's about their local work that they're doing. It might also be linked to where they received some training, or the conversations that they were in, or the various little communities of practice groups that were happening. And so there was all these different ones emerging. So I collected a few here on a poster, but it's certainly not all of them. And I'd be really happy for people to give me more to add to it. And I can get some support from Kim from the ABCD Institute and get it up on the website, which would be great, rather than having it here. So there was all these different ones from the ABCD Institute values that were crowdsourced over 2 years from practitioners around the world. And that was finalized in December of 2019, when we were, the stewards and faculty were in Chicago together. Little did we know what was coming in the next month or so when we were all back home and getting locked down in our homes. We've got here from Janine, who's on the call here, from South Africa with her ABCD Asset Pi, and that's very contextual and based on their experience as well. We've got ours at the Gita Institute. There's Vin from Vietnam. There's Michelle and her Deadly team in Deadly ABCD. There's the First Nations principles from Carrie Lynn and a whole bunch of other people. The Cody's principles. There's Jamie from 2 and 5 Network in Canada. And then there's some from Bristol in the UK here. So there is a whole lot of different ways that they're expressed, but kind of all have those foundational or similar underpinnings. So I'm just going to stop sharing screen for a second. Oh, thanks, Alison. I was going to put that in the chat. So they are expressed in different ways, but we can learn this from each other. And like Mary said, we've got this global perspective, and looking at that and supporting and sharing with each other, what could that look like locally, you know, in the places that we live, work, and play. So I'm just going to take a breath before we go into some breakout rooms. Are there any comments or questions before we move into some small groups?
If
Hey,
I may,
Frank.
hi. Yeah, I just want to just salute all the things you said, Mary. I just found the things you pulled out is just an astonishing way to look forward. We're in a world that needs so much change. And sometimes we get bewildered about where the touch points are, the handles, the ways of intervening. And I think, you just presented us, I guess, with a really great vision to say we're holding on to ABCD, but don't hold on to something that's rigid. See the ways it can be renewed, from the points you made about the language we use through to, I suppose, the areas where through partnerships we might be able to gain more leverage and so on. And I think the last point you made, which is that the fulcrum, the base, the core, the essence is the local. And I think we gain wider impact by the connecting up of the many locals into the bigger thing, which you've called a movement. What an awesome concluding input from you. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Anyone else before we shift? Okay. So Alison's going to put you into some smaller discussion groups. How many people on average have we got, Alison, in each group?
I was going to ask you that question of how many should I put, but I was thinking maybe 4 or 5.
I was going to say 4 or 5.
There you go.
Brilliant. Oh, of course, Joe. Thank you. Of course. Yes, I will. I will put that. So yeah, okay. So in groups of 4 or 5, and we wanted to, there's 3 questions and they'll be kind of 10 minutes each, but they're on different boards. So what we are going to try and do in our time allowable is you'll have 10 minutes on the first question, and I'll put the Jamboard link in the chat there. And then after that 10 minutes, you'll come back and we'll have like 30 seconds travel time, and Alison can kind of mix you up into different groups, and then I'll put Jamboard 2 link in and you'll go again for another 10 minutes, and then same thing and for the third question. Does that make sense? Just go with the flow. If it doesn't quite make sense, you're going to a breakout room with some cool people and you're going to have a discussion.
And if nobody's in your room, come back to the general room and we'll find you some friends.
Yeah. So the first question is going to be on this Jamboard. And so please link into it and enjoy 10 minutes, and we'll see you back here for a mix up. Stop recording. Do the in-between bit. Okay, we will. All right. I think that's everyone back. Yep. All right. Now, we all know 10 minutes is not long enough for anything, except maybe washing your cat or something. So Alison's going to just get you prepared for the next breakout where you'll be mixed up with some other people. But while she's doing that, are there any comments, any key things, epiphanies, things that stuck out? I was looking at some of the notes that went up. Does anyone want to add anything in particular or speak to it?
In our group, there was a comment by somebody saying, which I thought was very striking, which was, why are, unlike other movements, there was a women's movement, there was a labor movement, our movement, are we out there or known enough, and why isn't that the case? And I thought that was an interesting comment. That was, that really sparks reflection.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Frank. I noticed there was some about power. I think some of the themes that I've heard was around power diversification and also about funding. Was there anyone who wanted to speak to that at all? Well, thanks, Lisa. There's a link to Lisa's work in the chat. Any other comments, or are we ready to go, Alison?
How much time do you?
10. We'll do a 10 again. I think we're still going okay for time. So you'll go into another room and there's question 2, and I've double checked this is editable. You can put stickies straight up there. And so the second question there is what have we learned from each other about movement building? So go and enjoy 10 and we'll see you back here. back in a second. Thanks, Alison. Oh, my stomach just said it wanted breakfast pizza.
Mine wants breakfast chili con carne.
Excellent. It's like each time you all come back, we lose a person. What are you doing to them?
So funny.
Okay, so that one, have we got a couple of people who'd like to speak about what have we learned from each other about movement building? There's a couple of cool things on there. Does anyone want to speak to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I mean, being a newbie, I mean, just trying to understand the process, but I heard from one of my dear friends in the breakout room that as we scale up, the essence of the language may stay of ABCD, but in terms of the essence, it may be missing out. And I am, for a change, belong to a country like India, which will become possibly along with China, maybe fighting for number one position, if not for economically the most powerful nation, but for population wise. So 1.3 billion people right now. Can you imagine 1.3 or 4?
Well, yeah.
I have to think of scale. I can't do without scale. I tried, but in terms of how do I maintain the spirit of scale at the same time, not giving up on local. But yeah, I can't do without scale at the same time. So, yeah.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, thank you, Darpan. Are we good, Alison?
So my question, D, was like, imagine the world where there were no poor people, all of us who don't have a job. So our industry and the work we do is at the back of the poor. So we need to step back and out and say, well, actually, if you look at, I don't know the math, it's billions of dollars that we are spending daily in trying to resolve or solve the problems of the poor who have solutions of their own.
Right.
And we are not investing money in their solutions. We rather bring ourselves in as experts who think we know. And that really gets my back up. So yeah. So
thanks,
imagine
Bernie.
that world. Imagine that world.
And thank you for the beautiful segue, Bern, because that's what the third question is. So it's in the chat. And Alison will put you back out into rooms. But the next question is, how do we sustain the ABCD movement into the future? So go and have 10 and we'll see you back here.
See it after.
I think that's an important point, Bernie. Definitely. I know Jerry always talks of the sacred cow of ABCD is that things are always the community always knows best. When actually we've got to give ourselves some credit sometimes. That
sure,
you know what I mean. That we're part of that equation, and
yeah,
the values that we bring into that are sort of key to it, and you can't necessarily swap them out for someone who doesn't have those values and expect it to work.
I can almost guarantee Fiona is drawing a cow right now.
Cow.
Yeah.
want to see that.
Okay, is that everyone back? Okay, we gained another person this time instead of losing one. Well done, team. Well done. So there was, and thank you to whoever it was, the person who put those ones in nice, neat little lines. I'm reckoning maybe Michelle or JP. Would I be right? No?
Wasn't me.
Okay.
I smiled a really big smile when I saw somebody do it.
I don't know. I kind of liked it messy.
Well, they're all
Joe.
different.
Joe, you there?
So is there anyone who'd like to share a bit just from that one about the sustaining the ABCD movement? And then we'll just have a quick look at, I'll share screen of the three, but is there anyone who'd like to share just of question 3 there? Okay. There's one that I have a query about. I think I know where it's going. We had a bit of a talk about it in the main plenary room, but they're telling all the stories. Who wants to just give us a little bit of context around that one?
I wrote that because I think that's really important to share the stories, because we need to show people how great it is, and that's a really powerful way of doing it. Maybe actually that should go with the ebook tag as well.
What did you mean by all the stories?
Well, I just think I wonder if it's the same group of people telling the stories all the time. And I also wonder if there's different ways we can share stories. I went to a really great session about traditional oral storytelling, for example, which I thought was really fantastic and is really prevalent in Indigenous cultures.
Great.
But I think it's really important to capture everything, not just, here are the stories of the Cody graduates who went off and did cool things because Cody knows about them, so they're going to write about them, for example.
Thanks,
just
Jo.
something out of the air. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And one other, just before I share the screen, who is muted and who is not muted in the world? Who wants to speak to that a little bit? Maybe that person has left.
That came up in our group, and I think it's that old thing about voice. Yeah, it's this continuing struggles of having voice, and I think this way of us connecting, and this whole idea of someone is trying to talk and they're muted when you're in a conference like this, which is digital, just demonstrates that the mouths are moving, but there's an idea, there's an experience, there's rich stories. And are we getting those equitably all coming out and being available and being acknowledged?
Great. Thanks, Frank. All right. So we're
add something, Dee, just briefly, 1 second?
Yeah, please, Lisa, do.
Yeah. So like in the same spirit and like basing or drawing on the conversation I just had, I think like one of the things that will be important for us as a movement is to both continue with this very strong exchange and interaction within the in-group, if you will, but also really make sure that we're not leaving people behind. Because even now in this group, there are people who are new, and we might not take them along sufficiently because we speak too much of in-speak. It's important to have sessions for in-speak amongst insiders, because we discover a lot of new things based on our deep understanding of things. But it's also really important to have very deliberate strategies of keep bringing people in and being very explicit and open about the most basic of things, not making assumptions, not taking anything for granted. I think we really need to like make sure that we do both, that we keep this very strong dialogue amongst people who have been working and thinking and theoretical, conceptual, all these things, but also be very, very explicit about being open and accessible enough to overcome too much coded language. And I remember Mary saying something about that as well. Too much coded language, too much in-speak.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that's great. We've got a bit of a template for our organization for different meetings that we might have with our working groups. And at the top, it says in big bold letters, make sure anyone who is new knows how we flow. So like invite them in well, explain how this happens. So we don't just get on with a meeting. We kind of go, right, here's how we do it. This is our language. Yeah, thank you, Lisa. That's great. Bernie.
Yeah, so Dee, I think it's really important what Lisa just said, because I don't think people understand that all of what has happened has been on the back of other organizations and individuals who have given their time, who've given their resources, who've really lived the principles of ABCD. So nobody's been charged a fee to join anything. They've got it for free and they've got it for nothing and they probably going to build their careers on what they learned over 48 hours, right? So somewhere we need to acknowledge that whoever put this together, and I know we and all of us have done that, is really just to celebrate, and say, look, if you walk away from here and tomorrow you're a doctor in whatever, just say, I got it for free from the Unconference in 2022, because, I mean, that's our dilemma. We give away our materials, we train for free, we do that because of funders who support us. But you know what? People don't acknowledge you for the knowledge that they gain and what the resources they get. So I think what Lisa was saying is really, really important. Acknowledge that you gained this experience, which you would never in your lifetime have got if COVID did not hit our world. We would never have been. So maybe that's a takeaway for me, is that we would never have been able to 3 years now. We'd be doing an unconference purely because we couldn't conference, so we need to write that up as well. And I mean, meeting people from across the world, trying to implement the principles of ABCD needs to be noted. And I mean, people like yourself, and I'll say it again publicly, Michelle, you, Fiona, Alison, all of you have sustained this, because without you, it would not have happened. I don't know tech. I don't have energy. I don't know these things. You guys are like, you consultants, you're going to earn your own living, but you've kept it going, which is amazing. So I just take my little bit of hair off for you. And just like, it's awesome. In South Africa, you probably would have been told by now, what is the fee, and we corrupt you some way or the other so that you get a fee. And I really just salute all of you for how you held the space despite your own conditions and your own struggles. So thank you. I know I shouldn't be saying thank you, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernie. And yeah, it does take a village. And I think this proves it, it does take a village. And I think acknowledgement is really important. And I know there's been conversations over the years, even about stories, tapping back into what Joe said, about people telling their own stories, as in not keynotes at a conference telling other people's stories. Like, get those people there telling their own stories, and making sure that we do acknowledge where this is all coming from. And it's on the shoulders of giants we stand. Now, there's quite often, JP and I had a chat about it the other week about just the different processes, practices, blends that people put with ABCD. If we see it and it's not named, name it. Say, you know, this is where that came from, and this is where it fits in, and, you know, really name it and acknowledge the people who developed it or brought it to light or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that ties into it all as well, Bern. JP, were you going to
Can
add
I
something?
add? Can I add
Yeah,
half
yeah,
the thoughts of
please.
that? But
Yeah.
also that I think something that came up in one of our, I think it was my session, my breakout group number 2. They're all the breakouts are blending together from the last few days. But I think that also, I think that when there's credit given, the credit is given to institutional people. And so I as an institutional person, I would actually be very happy to not be credited with something that I've worked on and I've done, if the community that I worked with is the one getting the credit. And I think you know, others here probably feel the same, right? And so I think not just, I think more important than crediting, you know, and I think John and Jody would agree, right? More important than saying ABCD was discovered or named or, you know, by these people, John and Jody, right? That ABCD is this phenomenon that humans have been doing in communities around the world for human history. And in this instance, it's this community that did this, right? They discovered something that's already there and vibrant and thriving. And so I'd encourage us also to let's cite, you know, we have conventions for citing a book. How can we cite and lift up the community that inspired that, the community whose stories that is, because I think that's at the heart of this shift where our movement is, right?
Lovely, JP, thank you. Community citing. And I know one thing, and if Michelle's there and wants to, you can speak it, but I love what she reminds John McKnight of quite often about the origins of ABCD. Did you want to share it, Michelle?
Sorry, Dee, I'm in the middle of my breakfast pizza. But I'm happy to share that it's him and Jody didn't create ABCD. It happens in every community around the globe, and particularly in First Nations communities. It's actually the way that things happen. So it's just maybe shining a spotlight on it and creating a name for it, but it's really the way that communities naturally work. And sometimes communities are forgotten. It's like a forgotten knowledge of communities because we, you know, advocate responsibility to other powers, and it's always their job and they need to do it. But yeah, I think it's natural, and that's why we hear so many people that discover ABCD go, I found my tribe. I didn't know the way I did things was a thing. You know, so many community members say that when they start to embrace ABCD. So thanks, Dee.
Yeah, you're welcome. Believe that. But Alison, did you want to say anything around the community scholars?
Oh, I was just saying that I know within disability studies, which is also focused on, you know, disabled folks being the storytellers and the researchers and such from lived experience, we really try to, you know, by citing folks in the community, you create community scholars within academia, and there's a lot of work being done around that to, you know, frame things that way and think of things that way, especially, you know, for disabled folks in particular. You know, we frequently are patronized and, you know, are you know, there's a paternalism that exists within not only scholarship but community practice that you don't see in other places. And so I think there's some resonance and parallels that we could look to.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. This is just segueing beautifully along to where Mary and I are heading. But Janine, did you want to read Latsu's quote?
It's how I always start my ABCD training, because as you were saying, it's a name has been given to this process called ABCD, but probably at about exactly the same time as John and Jody were doing that in Chicago, I was given a set of training for transformation booklets by my parents as my graduation gift for my social work degree. And in there, I found this quote and I just read it and it just hit me deep in my heart. And I thought, this is how I want to do my community work, without knowing that at that moment it was being developed as ABCD in Chicago. So it's go to the people, live with them, love them, learn from them, start with what they know, build with what they have. But when the work is done, with the best leaders, when the work is done, the people will say, we have done this ourselves. And that, to me, when I saw that, I thought, this is the recipe for the best possible community development. And it was written by Lao Tzu 650 years before Christ was born. Mm-hmm. So it's like, as Michelle says, it's how we do things, or it should be how we do things. It's in our DNA, it's in our blood.
Thank you, Janine. Beautiful. Lisa.
Small addition. I think like what we could potentially think about is also being much more explicit in terms of just offering different ways of how to in different spaces, because ABCD is, the tools and all these things, even the processes, but it's also really this mindset and how you can actually practice it. So I work in this like international development space, right, where there's often a similar, I assume, a similar kind of patronizing attitude as Alison was referring to. People are being spoken about. Experts speak about people. And for example, just a tiny thing, when we started producing videos about our ABCD programs, their producers would be like, okay, so give me the interview questions. I'll interview you in the morning and then we lay over your voice over the video. And I was like, dude, go to the people and discover the stories they're telling you. And later I will let you know whether I think that this is cool, it works like with what we want to represent. But I'll not be appearing in your video. And they were flabbergasted. I was like, what? But this is exactly also what JP, I think, was referring to. So I think, if we're a group of people who deeply think about this, let's share techniques. Let's share these small things. It's a small thing to tell a videographer, no, don't film me. Don't interview me. Don't have voiceover. It's so simple, but voiceover is patronizing. Voiceover is someone explaining the world about someone else. It is so simple. But like we could just collect these small things and that can make a very big difference to who is telling whose stories how.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lisa. Excellent.
That's why I loved that our opening session had the strong panel of Indigenous folks who were able to remind all of us Western oriented white folks of a whole different mindset. And it was so good to start on that note so that we weren't perpetuating a sort of our superiority or our way of looking at things in this sort of dry and organized fashion, and doesn't leave much room for the spirit and for the ingenuity of the things that happen in community that aren't programmed and that don't get fit into the boxes. So I really, really appreciate that we started on the right foot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So Dee, I always say that I hate the lottery because I don't like it and I don't like the idea of it. But if I had my own money to be a philanthropist, I would do it completely differently from the way it is done today. I would just give to whoever is doing good without the rules and bureaucracy. And all of us, or most of us on this group, are paid people whichever way we look at it, we are paid to do what we do, you know, on the back again of those who don't have. And so we may be, yeah, we noble and we great and we wonderful people, but take away our salaries and our perks and what we earn and what we do, would we do it differently tomorrow? I'm not sure. So I leave it there, because for me, it's been a huge question around, would I still be able to advocate and do what I do if I didn't have the Ford Foundation, Miserios, the EU, all of those behind me, but I ridicule them on the back of the work that I do. So I think we need to also be honest about, where does our stream of money come from that enables us to do what we say is supposedly right, but on the back of what and who, you know? So I leave it there because I need a cigarette now. It's late, it's Friday, I'm old, my dogs are crying, and I need to go to bed. So yeah, I'll be overtime anyway. Yeah.
No, we're okay. But thank you.
You can
Thanks,
continue.
Bernie.
I'm gonna have a glass of wine now. And a cigarette, because I owe it to myself. Thank you.
Finally, the glass of wine. I've slept since then.
I'm
I'll
ready
be
to join
here.
you, Bernie.
I'll see you, but I'm not gonna join you. I'll listen to you.
Well, we're wrapping up, Bernie. We're wrapping up. So for us here in Australia, who are ahead of the rest, except Joanne, I think is the only one a bit further ahead. So it's 7 a.m. on Saturday morning for us. So that means it's 9 a.m. for Joe. Is that right? Yeah. On Saturday morning. So that was our Friday night. We spent joining sessions all over the world. So thanks,
And it's 10 past. Oh, 10 minutes past. Oh, Lord, I forgot.
So
it's past 10
1:30
o'clock.
a.m.
It's past 10 o'clock, yeah.
So Ritu's up
Long
at
past my
1:30 a.m.
bedtime.
Thank
I
you.
have to sleep at like 9:30.
All right, I'm going to share screen again. And we've just got a last couple of slides, and then we will say farewell. So, which, you know, a lot of us have already talked about this. This was a quote that, well, it was actually, Mary, when you were in Australia and we were doing a workshop in Sydney with Jim and Jody, and there was these two quotes that were put up, and no one could remember, was it Jody or John who said it? And so it was put together in this way, and it was quoted from both of them. So, and you recognize it. You can hear both John and Jody's words in it. So every living person has some gift or capacity of value to others. A strong community is a place that recognizes these gifts and ensures they are given. And that's, you know, exactly what Bernie was just talking about as well. It's that acknowledgement, it's the stories, it's everything. And all these photos and snippets all around here are from the last 48 hours as well. So finally, this last thing we want to kind of leave you with, and Alison's going to put a couple of links into the chat. And also we'll give you the links to these slides as well. So you can always go in here and click on them. So you've got the ABCD ebook where all the recordings have been uploaded to. That's an ongoing project that we haven't kind of regrouped around for a while to kind of tidy up and look at. And Alison's been holding the space for that. Alison, who is the second best thing next to Google, as we heard in one session. And also Connect on ABCD in Action. That platform at the moment is starting to transition to a new platform blended with the ABCD Institute. But you can still join if you're not a member, and I'll find the link for that as well. We will be putting out a call for a post-unconference debriefing session. So we have got some of the evaluations coming through, but this will be maybe in a month's time or a little bit longer, where we will just invite people to come back and reflect on how was the unconference for you this year? What worked and what didn't work? And what are some ideas you might have for the future? So there is the unconference evaluation form, which I'm sure someone's putting in the chat right now. There is the Google form for the open space topics, and Amanda has suggested that we can continue to put topics up there, and let's check in on that open space every couple of months, and we can come together again, and we don't have to wait a year. There's also, well, one thing that we haven't put up there, which we'll get a bit more clarity around, but the first co-learning journey was hosted this year by Terry, Jess and Michelle. And that was seekers and, what was it? Seekers and learners. We'll go with that for the moment.
Sharers and seekers.
Sharers and seekers, thank you. And that's where JP and I have been connecting all year. Once a month we'll have a chat, and then we go to this co-learning journey pod and we hear from other people around the world. And so I'm sure that's going to be further refined again as well. And the last thing is, go and say hi to one of your neighbors today. Go and smile at someone. Go and pat a dog, wash a cat, whatever it is that you need to do with your neighbors. And so, yeah, final words I'm going to hand over to Mary. She doesn't know this yet, but we will see you in 2023, where this might, each year we're getting, a little tighter, a little better. But I just wanted to hand over to you, Mary, because I think you would have some very wise and wonderful final words for us all.
Well, I think there's a song that I learned in South Africa, which goes, together we can make it, 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 together, 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 together we can make it. That's my word.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Okay, so we're actually a little ahead of time. So we have finished, but I don't want anyone to leave going, oh, wow, I wish I'd said that. So let's just do a quick check-in if there's any final words from anyone before we wrap it up.
I think we're all talked out. I don't know about you.
That's
I'll
okay.
have a glass of wine and just sit.
I think
maybe just a photo to round it out.
Debbie, go Deb.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't going to say this, but I'm just thinking of a phrase. I was at a conference and they were talking about the idea. It was a faith-based conference. And they were talking about scholars of the text and religious leaders or religious experts and scholars of the context. So when Allison was talking about community scholars, I love the idea of scholars of the context. So just throw that out.
Thank you. Thanks, Deb. I'm just going to put the link for
So Dee, I'll just want to acknowledge that I'm like Ritu, I'm part of many families of different things, but I'm just absolutely in awe of how all of this has come together. And I was initially part of the planning team, and then I had lots of wobbles in my own personal life. Nobody judged me, nobody ridiculed me, nobody criticized me for not stepping up and into the plate and on the plate. And I'm just really grateful. It's not the usual for most things that I belong to. If you don't step up, despite how you feel. And what I felt with this group was we all knew how we were feeling, and the empathy and the caring and the love was just like, it's okay, you know, step in when you can, because we know that you're not committed, but you're going through personal issues, organizational stuff. So I think
Yeah.
it's unique, and I think we need to. So there is the book about reinventing organizations, and I think ABCD has the ability to help the country or countries to reimagine the way that organizations usually function, because this way works. It works because there's a trust issue. The underlying thing is a trust issue. So I'm just grateful that you carried my back. You know, all of you had my back when I was really down. But we pulled it, and sure, my brother said to me, "Are you mad? Are you on the phone for 48 hours?" I said, "No, not on the phone." But nobody understands this. It's unique. It's different. Nobody can understand the concept of a 48-hour virtual. And the way that worked this year was much better than last year, you know. So thank you to everybody who held it together, even though I dropped the ball. But
You
I
did
don't feel
not.
like I
Stop
dropped
that.
it. No, I don't feel like
No.
it, because you're my sisters, you know,
Yeah.
and we were there for each other. Because, you know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Thanks,
have done that,
Jody.
but it was great. I mean, it was
Thank
great.
you.
And I met lots of wonderful people. So thank you to all of you. I'm
Thanks,
blessed.
Jody.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take one final screenshot. So cameras on if you want to be in it, cameras off if you don't. It's totally your decision, and I will count us down. And I was actually going to offer you that space, Michelle, but yep, we'll get to that in a second. So I'll do a countdown. Let me get it ready. Feel free to do spirit fingers, wave your hands, do whatever you like. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, good stuff. All right. So, Michelle, do you want to quickly speak to the link you put in the chat, and then we will call it a wrap?
No, Jody.
Thank you, Dee. And I think probably nearly everybody on this call is sick of me putting this out there, because I've done it in every session that I've been in. But just like to, as part of the organising team for the 2023 World Community Development Conference in Darwin, and for those of you that don't know where Darwin is, it's sort of in the middle of the top end of Australia, and we invite you to consider putting in a submission to present and joining us in Darwin for what will be a different experience for everybody, as we really have a strong First Nations focus for the conference. And when I say First Nations, I'm talking about global First Nations. So our brothers and sisters from Canada, from Aotearoa, from the Philippines, Indonesia, and further on, coming together, as well as Western practitioners. So please come to Darwin. We look forward to seeing you there.
Excellent. Thank you. So thanks, Mary, for co-hosting. Oh, is she gone? I think Mary left the building. That's okay. So yeah, thanks, Mary, for co-hosting. Thanks to Alison, who's the next best thing to Google, and just everyone who was part of this incredible year. And yeah, look out for an invitation in a month or so to a bit of a debrief session if you want to come and join us. And we will definitely see you around the traps. We'll see you. Stay connected and go and say hi to your neighbor and wash your cat. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't sleep.
Bye.
Sleep well.